Tonight's headlines: the NHS is to plan a vaccine booster programme throughout the UK in readiness for winter. Ministers say they've been advised by experts that more than 30 million of the most vulnerable should receive a COVID booster.
They back our plans, which are to roll it out from September this year onwards, and really to do what it takes to keep the virus at bay.
We'll consider the challenge for the NHS as the current vaccination programme is still going on. Also tonight, 3 years after he was sent to prison for sexual assault, the American entertainer Bill Cosby has had his conviction overturned. The fashion chain Gap confirms plans to close all of its 81 stores in the UK and Ireland and go online only. Dozens of people die in Canada in a heatwave, seeing temperatures hit nearly 50 degrees Celsius. And at Wimbledon, a late-night win for Andy Murray after another tough match on centre court.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, crossing the divide as Everton appoint former Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez on a 3-year contract.
Good evening. The NHS has been told to start planning a COVID vaccine booster programme throughout the UK in readiness for the winter months. Experts are advising that more than 30 million of the most vulnerable people should receive a booster, including all adults aged 50 and over and anyone younger who qualifies for a flu vaccination. Health service bosses have said that they need plenty of warning to plan the logistics while the current vaccination programme is still going on. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh has more details.
It was in December that Margaret Keenan helped launch the NHS COVID immunisation programme. Since then, nearly 33 million adults here have received both doses of vaccine. The JCVI, the body which advises government on vaccines, says it's still unclear whether adults will need a third booster dose from September, but planning needs to start now. If a booster campaign is launched this autumn, it'll be divided into 2 stages. Top priority would be given to those aged 70 and over, people who are immunocompromised or extremely clinically vulnerable, and frontline health and social care workers. In stage 2 would come all those over 50, plus younger adults deemed to be in a flu or COVID at-risk group.
Vaccination remains the absolute key out of this nightmare that we've been in for well over a year now. We all want to see this nightmare come to an end, and that means get out there and get your vaccines. If you haven't already, please do so. And it also means having this booster program, because when we start that in September, that's our plan, it means that we can keep it at bay.
In most people, 2 doses of vaccine give very strong protection against severe COVID, which lasts at least 6 months. By the end of August, scientists will have a clearer idea whether immunity is beginning to wane. A booster dose would likely be given at the same time as the flu vaccine, COVID shot in one arm, flu in the other.
We really welcome this, and it's really good to plan, but we have to remember that this needs to be on a sustainable footing. The NHS is under huge pressure, dealing with the backlog of care, rising demand for emergency services and mental health services, and preparing for the winter.
Booster doses would most likely be of current vaccines rather than new versions tweaked to deal with variants. It's unlikely those getting their first doses now will need a third shot this autumn, as young adults tend to have a better immune response. And it's still not been decided whether 12 to 17-year-olds are to be offered jabs. They're at very low risk from COVID, but it might help prevent outbreaks in schools.
And Fergus, as well, can we deal with one of the big debates today, Fergus, which is this. In allocating resources for boosters, the government, in effect, is actually making less available for people in other countries too who've not had even a first jab.
Well, in a pandemic, no one country can be said to be truly safe until the whole world is protected, and just 1 in 4 people globally has had at least 1 dose of COVID vaccine, and in low-income countries it's just 1 in 100 people. So there is an ethical argument that can be made for prioritising the most vulnerable globally. But the UK government earlier this month pledged to donate 100 million surplus doses in the next 12 months. And it's worth pointing out that most doses currently being used in poorer countries are the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which was developed here and is being distributed not for profit. I think an autumn booster campaign here, while not set in stone, is looking increasingly likely in some form. But at least as important this autumn will be the flu vaccine campaign, because influenza, which has been in abeyance throughout this pandemic, and other viruses really could make a roaring comeback once social distancing restrictions are lifted.
Fergus, again, many thanks. Fergus Walsh, our medical editor there. Some more news on the pandemic today. The Education Secretary for England, Gavin Williamson, says he wants the school bubble system to be removed as soon as possible, as soaring numbers of pupils are being sent home to self-isolate. The change could happen alongside the next step of unlocking, which is due to happen on the 19th of July in England, meaning that pupils returning to school in September would not be in bubbles. And a look at the latest official figures on the pandemic, which show that in the last 24 hours, 14 deaths were reported and 26,068 new infections were recorded. There's been an average of 19,296 new cases per day in the UK last week. Nearly 138,000 people received a first dose of the vaccine in the latest 24-hour period. That means that 44.7 million people have now had their first jab, nearly 85% of UK adults. Over 150,000 people have had their second dose of the vaccine in the latest 24-hour period. More than 32.8 million people have now had both doses. That's 62.4% of UK adults. Let's turn to some of the day's other stories. President Biden has warned that the western part of the United States is facing more danger from wildfires this year than ever before. The area is experiencing an extreme heat wave, which has led to record temperatures along the coast. And yesterday, temperatures hit a new record, reaching 49.5 degrees in British Columbia in Canada. Dozens of people have died as a result of the conditions. Our science editor, David Schuckman, takes a closer look.
A sign of trouble in a world that's getting hotter. An emergency cooling centre in a region that never normally needs one. The western United States and Canada are experiencing heat they're just not used to.
I think it's incredibly important that we set up these spaces so people can come in, feel taken care of, feel safe, get cool, and get some water and a bite to eat if they need it.
You know, the hotels seem to be sold out as well because people are running away. They need to go somewhere cool with AC. It's just unbearable. It's impossible to be out.
It's most dangerous for the homeless. Helping them with shade and water is essential. In Canada, which is famous for its cold, the heat wave has been blamed for more than 100 deaths. It's the elderly who are less able to regulate their body temperature who are most vulnerable.
Whether you have harder breathing problems or even if you're an elderly person, sometimes you just don't cope quite as well in the heat and sun.
And the hotter it gets, the more wildfires are likely to start. This one was filmed in California a few days ago. President Biden has warned that the rising temperatures bring all kinds of dangers.
The extreme heat we're seeing in the West is not only a risk amplifier for wildfires, it's a threat in and of itself. People are hurting. It's more dangerous for kids to play outside. Roads are buckling under the heat. I need not tell all of you.
So what's causing this heat? Well, there's a vast dome of high pressure above Western Canada. It's like a lid in the atmosphere, trapping warm air and pushing it down where it gets even hotter. And the heat is held in place by the path of the jet stream, so temperatures have kept climbing. And this is really unusual. The dark red area is far warmer than average, and scientists say that it's human activity, the burning of fossil fuels, that's made this far more likely.
Analysis of the temperatures that we're seeing in the western side of North America just wouldn't have been feasible in the natural course of events. We've analysed the climate that you would expect without emissions of greenhouse gases And you just don't see these sorts of extraordinary temperatures that we're seeing at the moment.
The next big worry is farmland and whether crops will survive the punishing temperatures. The heat wave won't last forever, but it is a reminder of what climate change can really mean. David Shukman, BBC News.
Now, the clothing retailer Gap has announced that it's closing all 81 of its stores in the UK and Ireland by the end of September and will only trade online. The company has not said so far how many employees might be affected by the plans. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson is here. What's behind this, Emma?
We got a sense that this was coming, Huw, last autumn when Gap announced a strategic review of its entire European operation, saying back then it was considering closing all its UK stores. Now, just a few weeks ago, 19 were to close. Tonight, the rest of them as well. Gap blaming what it calls market dynamics. In other words, sales moving online. It's also looking to offload all its stores in Italy and France. And of course, when Gap first arrived in the UK back in the 80s, it was a big hit, famous for those hoodies and sweatshirts, but it lost its relevance, lost its way, and it was struggling long before the pandemic. So this pandemic has simply accelerated a lot of the changes that were already underway. In many ways, it's been survival of the fittest, really. A lot of big names have gone. Now, another famous one is throwing in the towel and going online only.
Emma, many thanks again. Emma Simpson there, our business correspondent, with the latest on the Gap story. Now, the American entertainer Bill Cosby has had his conviction for sexual assault overturned by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Mr. Cosby, who's 83, has served more than 2 years of his sentence at a state prison near Philadelphia. He'd originally been found guilty of drugging and molesting a woman in 2004. But dozens of other women had also publicly accused him of sexual assault, but no further action was taken against him. Let's join our correspondent Michelle Fleury in Philadelphia for the latest there. Michelle?
Huw, for the last 2 years, this has been where Bill Clinton has called home. But tonight, he will sleep in his own bed after the bombshell decision by Pennsylvania's Supreme Court to overturn his conviction of sexual assault on the grounds that his Fifth Amendment rights, that is, the right against self-incrimination, were violated. This case was one of the earliest and most prominent in the Me Too movement. This is the moment Bill Cosby left prison a free man. He had served 2 years of a 3 to 10 year sentence. His fall from grace was sealed in 2018 after he was found guilty of 3 counts of sexual assault for drugging and molesting Andrea Constant in 2004. But in a stunning reversal, Pennsylvania's highest court said the entertainer should never have been charged. In the split ruling, the judges wrote the trial shouldn't have gone ahead because of an immunity deal Mr. Cosby had struck with a previous prosecutor. He can't be retried.
He just said his heart was racing. He couldn't believe it. He said they was ringing his cell. They was just knocking on the walls, the inmates. And he said, they said, look, you're free. Get up, get up. And he was like, what are these guys talking about?
Gloria Allred, who represented 30 of Bill Cosby's accusers, said, this decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court today to overturn the conviction of Bill Cosby must be devastating for Bill Cosby's accusers. My heart especially goes out to those who bravely testified in both of his criminal cases. Bill Cosby became known as America's dad for his role as Cliff Huxtable in the 1980s hit sitcom The Cosby Show. His conviction was seen as proof that even when the accused is one of the most famous people in the world, the voices of the victims of sexual assault could be heard in the US justice system. Now he has a chance to restore his reputation. Michelle Fleury, BBC News, Pennsylvania.
And just to clarify what was said there in Michelle's introduction to the story, when she mistakenly said Bill Clinton instead of Bill Cosby, we apologise for the mistake. The story, of course, is about Bill Cosby, the entertainer. Now, the Vice President of the European Commission has formally agreed to postpone a ban on some British meat products being sold in Northern Ireland. The proposed restrictions on items such as sausages and mince are a result of the Northern Ireland element in the Brexit agreement, which in effect put a customs border in the Irish Sea. The ban will now come into force at the end of September. Donald Rumsfeld, one of the principal architects of the invasion of Iraq in 2003, has died at the age of 88. He served as Secretary of Defence under President George W. Bush, and his leading role in promoting the Bush administration's so-called war on terror has been heavily criticised by many in the years since then. Our North America editor John Sopel has more.
Donald Rumsfeld served 4 presidents over 5 decades. Hawkish in outlook and a waspish personality, he was a key architect of America's response to 9/11, the invasion of Afghanistan, and most controversially, the invasion of Iraq. A Navy pilot in the 1950s, Rumsfeld later became an Illinois congressman. Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger saw in him a cold ruthlessness and gave him a job in cabinet.
A strong defense posture gives weight to our values and our views in international negotiation.
In 1975, under Gerald Ford, he became the youngest ever defense secretary. Ronald Reagan sent him to the Middle East, where he met Saddam Hussein, the leader he'd one day helped to overthrow.
I'm submitting the name of Donald Rumsfeld to be Secretary of Defense.
Nearly 20 years later, George W. Bush reappointed him Defense Secretary. Within months, America came under attack. Rumsfeld was in his Pentagon office on September the 11th, 2001, when an airliner hit the building. He helped move the injured and then planned a way to strike back. Rumsfeld believed the Iraq war would be over quickly, but there was no plan for building a peace. A fierce insurrection followed that claimed thousands of lives, and the pretext for the invasion, Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, but none were ever found, and Rumsfeld struggled to explain why.
There are known knowns. There are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we now know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know we don't know.
In this so-called war on terror, he was prepared to push boundaries, including the treatment of suspected militants. But when these photographs of the brutalization of Iraqi prisoners appeared, there was a backlash.
These events occurred on my watch. I am accountable for them, and I take full responsibility.
The scandal damaged him, and with his Iraq strategy increasingly questioned, he resigned in 2006. Donald Rumsfeld was a neocon, a man who believed American power could be used to spread democracy. He was never short of critics, but until the end he remained steadfast in his belief that he'd acted in America's best interests.
Donald Rumsfeld, the former US Secretary of Defence and one of the architects of the invasion of Iraq, who's died at the age of 88. Now, of all the challenges produced by the pandemic, dealing with the many issues that disabled people have faced is among the least prominent. Research carried out by the BBC has revealed the extent of the challenges endured by those who lost their vital support services and the families who had to step in. More than 3,000 people took part in the research, and our Disability News correspondent Nikki Fox has the story of one family's struggle during the past year.
It felt like we were living in a pressure cooker and we were just surviving.
Lockdown was too much for this teenager to bear. It tipped his family, already on the edge, into chaos.
Just trying to keep Max safe and keep ourselves safe.
This is Max when he struggles to cope, becoming violent with his mum. When he can no longer deal with what life throws at him, he reacts by being threatening towards those who support him.
You're living every minute of every hour of every day thinking, how in the next 5-10 minutes are we going to prevent him from injuring himself, injuring us, or seriously damaging our property or somebody else's property.
He couldn't understand why COVID meant his crucial hours of support, his routine, everything that made his world manageable, just disappeared overnight.
All the things that we used to use to keep him active and busy and give him a routine, it just all stopped. And that might seem like not a lot to deal with for some people. However, for Max and for us, that was really calamitous.
A lack of routine meant Max's behaviour became so bad the family were having to call the police out several times a week.
I was saying, our family are in crisis. I cannot keep my child safe. I cannot keep myself and my husband safe. Please help us. And nobody seemed to know not what to do or how to help. It seemed that families like ours weren't important.
And things came to a head in May last year when Max hit his dad and knocked him unconscious.
I ended up having to be admitted to hospital with a head injury, and that certainly for those around us was so scary.
But here, Max is a different person. At this specialist centre, he learns how to control his emotions.
So keep your hand on him.
It's these kinds of vital services he couldn't access during the pandemic.
Goodbye.
How does it make you feel when you're around Pumpkin?
Nice and calm.
Nice and calm, yeah. Would you spend all your time here if you could? A place like this is helping rebuild Max's confidence, but it will be a long and difficult process.
It takes a lot of strength to keep going and remember what this is about, but this is about Max.
Caroline, stop it, you.
No, sorry. It's
no,
just,
yeah.
It just shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't be so hard for him to have what other people can just very easily have, and that's I think that's the difficulty for me as his mum.
You feel like you're fighting all the time.
Constantly fighting, and it wears you down. But yeah,
Right.
but I won't stop.
I'm so proud of you. What brilliant grooming of that horse. Was that Tuffy?
And his mum will have to carry on fighting, because just like the thousands of others who have contacted us, the pandemic has made their future so much harder. Nikki Fox, BBC News.
Tomorrow, Prince William and Prince Harry will come together to unveil a statue of their mother, the late Diana, Princess of Wales, on what would have been her 60th birthday. It'll be the first time the brothers have been seen next to each other since the funeral of their grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh. And despite that appearance of unity, questions remain about the state of their relationship, as our royal correspondent Daniela Ralph explains.
Oh my God. Get this on camera. You forgot your boots. Oh my God.
They'd been so close. It seemed an unbreakable bond.
He is the one person on this earth who I can actually really, we can talk about anything and we understand each other and we give each other support.
We get along, really well, Harry and I. We're a very close family. There are disagreements, obviously, as all families do, and when they are, they're big disagreements.
Look, we're stuck together for the rest of our lives, so.
Their easy displays of fun and affection with their mother captivated the public. Her love for her sons open and on show. Tessie Ojo has worked with William and Harry on protecting Diana's memory and sees the statue as an emotional and significant moment.
I think the statue is another form of legacy. It's celebrating everything that she stood for the 36 years that she lived. It would capture the thoughts of her sons around her, and I think that would be so meaningful.
They were brothers who'd shared a grief and a recovery, but the bonds of the past are now broken, with conflicts over Meghan, staff, public life and future direction.
Our British royal family is not supposed to be a perfect family. If somehow out of this split comes some sort of reconciliation, that will presumably hold a lesson for all of us.
The problem is that reconciliation is proving hard to reach. The unveiling of their mother's statue here tomorrow will publicly see a united front from William and Harry. But privately, sources say there is still deep upset and mistrust, and that close connection, for now, has gone. For more than 45 years, Arthur Edwards has photographed royalty. From behind the lens, he has seen it all.
Diana loved the camera. She always knew where I was.
For him, there will be genuine sadness tomorrow.
Well, let's put it this way, Daniela. If this unveiling doesn't break the ice between them, nothing will, I don't think. I mean, this is so important. They should perhaps shake hands or just say something lovely to each other, be nice. But, you know, don't hold your breath.
102 years old and then a newborn.
This afternoon, Harry, back in the UK, was a surprise guest at a charity garden party with seriously ill children. Just the type of event his mother would have supported. Diana's influence on the modern royal family remains. Tomorrow, could the unveiling of her statue help heal the relationship between her sons? Daniela Ralph, BBC News, Kensington Palace.
Now at Wimbledon, Andy Murray has made it through to the third round after a thrilling 5-set match, late night match against the German Oscar Otter. British #1 Dan Evans also made it through, and fellow Brit Cameron Norrie won his first round match. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson reports from the All England Club.
We may look at him and wonder how much more. We only know how much he's given. There were times on centre court when Andy Murray looked like a champion, but times when he didn't. Germany's Oscar Otter could see his big opportunity. Of course he could. He took a 2-1 lead. Now hang on, what about the grass? Bottom of the screen, Murray.
Oh no!
Now Wimbledon spent the day explaining the courts are normal, just need to firm up. Was that the end? No. Murray played on. For worse or better. Roof on, 4th set renaissance. Yeah, right there.
He does it this time.
Suddenly only a power cut would stop him. Gentle touch and then the noise. Was that metal hip now fitted with some kind of jet engine?
Oh, that is brilliant. And there is vintage Murray again.
6-2 in the 5th, it felt like a win to match any of Murray's here. Was that court really only half full?
I needed everyone's help tonight, and yeah, they did a great job. And yeah, I hit some great shots at the end to finish it, but it was a tough match.
Well, he said it. The hill was first Henman's, and if you're here to cheer British players, well, you must remember there are others. There are seeds. A dominant performance from Dan Evans against Dusan Lajovic. He's seeded 22 for a reason. Life on track, straight sets win. Evans into the 3rd round.
And that's it.
Keep waving. The 29th seed Cameron Norrie won today, and he's enjoying an outstanding year. Well, we could glimpse court 18 for Emma Raducanu, not 19 until November. She won today. Great potential for British tennis. Games stop at 40. Venus Williams is 41. And when she lost today, we were reminded again that time is always the great opponent.
Is this the last time?
Well, really, we don't want any of these great players to stop, and Andy Murray is doing his best to please us. It seemed at times that he was summoning defiance from thin air this evening. I should mention that Novak Djokovic, #1 seed, went through in straight sets, but he did slip a lot earlier in the afternoon on centre court. And what Wimbledon say is really what the courts need is sunshine. Now, can you imagine that?
Indeed, Joe. Thanks very much. Joe Wilson there for us at the All England Club. Let's turn to the football. And England fans hoping to watch their team's quarter-final in Rome on Saturday are being urged not to travel because COVID restrictions require them to self-isolate for 5 days. The FA has said it won't be selling tickets for the match against Ukraine. Italian officials are said to be drawing up plans to tighten border controls, and they insist there will be no exceptions to the quarantine rules. Our sports editor Dan Rowan has the latest.
He's the man England have come to rely on at the Euros.
Across for Sterling!
A 3rd goal of the tournament by Raheem Sterling, putting his team on course for a momentous win against Germany. But having helped secure a result that England's fans will never forget, today he insisted there's still much more to do.
It was a great victory last night against Germany, but now, you know, for it to be even better, you know, we need to keep pushing.
Revival under manager Gareth Southgate gathering pace.
He's made big decisions. You know, he's made substitutes at the right time. We haven't conceded a goal yet, you know, and we're now into the quarterfinals of a major tournament with a great opportunity to go further. I think we now have to start actually believing that Gareth knows what he's doing.
A peak TV audience of more than 20 million watched England's win. This morning, signs of growing belief in a team that's given many the lift they needed. After 4 matches here at Wembley, England are now preparing for their first away fixture. And today the FA returned its allocation of just over 2,000 tickets for Saturday's quarter-final in Italy. They've been put on general sale for England fans based outside of the UK. The government has urged supporters here not to travel to Rome because of COVID restrictions. Controls at Italian airports today tightened, with all UK visitors reminded they must keep to a 5-day quarantine on arrival, meaning they'd miss Saturday's match. But England will still have some support.
I've lived in Rome for 35 years and I've managed to get a ticket.
Expat Dawn Hughes telling me today just what it meant to be going to the game.
So excited, privileged, and I'm going to just be there and support England for all my friends and family back in the UK that can't get over here. I'm going to be there, waving my flag.
A lot more fans in Rome than their opponents because the country is in the EU's COVID green zone with less travel restrictions. England are in the easier side of the draw, so what's their route to possible glory? Overcome Ukraine and they'll return to Wembley to face a semi-final against either Denmark or the Czech Republic, who they beat last week in the group stage. Win that and they'd be in a first ever Euros final against one of Switzerland, Spain, Belgium or Italy. After the euphoria of last night, England were able to enjoy some downtime today, but they'll be all too aware of the chance they now have to go all the way. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Wembley.
That's it from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.